Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ram. Namaste. We are continuing on page 274.
Yes.
And getting towards the end of the...
Yeah. We will be reading the paragraph beginning with "Behind all these terms." Before we read the para, for the sake of continuity, I'll tell you what he has said in the previous para. If man's body, vital and mind were limited only to the possibilities of matter, then certainly our evolutionary effort would be very restricted. Then man could achieve nothing more than what he has already accomplished. But man's life and mind are not limited to gross matter's darkness. Vedanta discovered 5 levels of substance: ether, air, fire, water and earth. Man can live on any of these planes. Another theory spoke of 3 levels of our being: physical gross, subtle and causal. And the human soul lives simultaneously on all the planes. The outer nature of man restricts him to the lowest grade, the physical. But this is not inevitable. Man can enter into all these inner and subtler realms and stationed there, live from there. This is how psychic and occult phenomena become possible. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, ESP, that is extrasensory perception, are the consequences of entry into these hidden worlds. Hatha Yoga and Tantra have reduced these possibilities to a rigorous science. They discovered 6 centers in the subtle body, normally closed and inactive in man. But they can be activated by well-tested yogic methods, and all the limitations and obstructions of the lower planes can be destroyed and removed by yoga. Even physical laws such as gravitation can be overcome. Levitation is a well-known yogic experience. This is what he said in the previous para. Now we continue from there. Behind all these terms of ancient psychophysical science lies the one great fact and law of our being, that whatever be its temporary poise of form, consciousness, power in this material evolution, there must be behind it, and there is a greater, a truer existence, of which this is only the external result and physically sensible aspect. Our substance does not end with the physical body. That is only the earthly pedestal, the terrestrial base, the material starting point. As there are behind our waking mentality vaster ranges of consciousness, subconscious and superconscious to it, of which we become sometimes abnormally aware, so there are behind our gross physical being other and subtler grades of substance with a finer law and a greater power, which support the denser body and which can, by our entering into the ranges of consciousness belonging to them, be made to impose that law and power on our dense matter and substitute their purer, higher, intenser conditions of being for the grossness and limitation of our present physical life and impulses and habits. If that be so, then the evolution of a nobler physical existence, not limited by the ordinary conditions of animal birth and life and death, of difficult alimentation and facility of disorder and disease and subjection to poor and unsatisfied vital cravings, ceases to have the appearance of a dream and chimera and becomes a possibility founded upon a rational and philosophic truth, which is in accordance with all the rest that we have hitherto known, experienced, or been able to think out about the overt and secret truth of our existence. So this is what he has said. The language is pretty clear, but sentences are very long.
How is it imposed? He uses the word imposed on us. Can be imposed on us. It's way back in the beginning.
Impose that law. Belonging to them, be made to impose that law. That is to say, impose means something like now when we try to control our vital with our mind, we don't do it very successfully. But we are trying to impose the truth of mind on our vital because they are opposite. So impose in that sense. Just like a judge imposes his punishment on a prisoner. He has to undergo that. So our body-mind life being limited, the higher laws which are contrary to the limitations of the body-mind life are imposed on it. In other words, you lose the difficulties and the limitations of the body-mind life. That's what it means. It's sort of, the higher laws are forced upon the lower. In that sense. So, behind all these terms of ancient psychophysical science, let us note that Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga definitely, they are psychophysical methods. Asanas and pranayama and breathing exercises, all these are psychophysical. Okay? And in Hatha Yoga it is even more physical. They do all sorts of things. They clean them esophagus, they clean their intestines, they do all these things by well-known methods. Okay? They swallow a thin 1-inch strip of very soft cloth, long cloth, okay? And they swallow the whole thing and then pull it out. So the entire...
It's called dhauti, vastra dhauti.
Yeah, that's right. The whole esophagus becomes clean and there's no more phlegm there anymore. Okay? This is what they do. They even go to the extent of they develop the power of taking in water from the lower end of the body. They sit in a tub and they have the power to suck in normally in medical science we do that by an enema. But they do it naturally. And then the water comes out, or intestines become clear. So this is how they purify. It's physical. Okay? Asanas is purely physical. These methods are physical. That's what Srimad is saying. Psychophysical. Let us note that Sri Aurobindo, he never insists on any physical exercises. Entirely psychological. If you want to do the physical exercises, he has no problem. He doesn't have any... In fact, he himself practiced pranayama. Okay? Pranayama is physical, yet a little psychological also, because you concentrate on things. But he has no objection to that. You can do asanas also, and you can also do pranayama. But he says it is not absolutely necessary. You can use psychological methods.
I believe he also said it could be dangerous.
Okay, so you are raising an interesting question. He says in one place, everything in yoga can be dangerous except the psychic awakening. The psychic awakening will never give you danger because it guides you perfectly. But everything else, if pranayama is not done in the right way, and in Sri Aurobindo's case, he practiced for a long time and gave up. And when he gave up, there were untoward events. Huh?
Regarding that, he says, I was almost carried off.
Yes, that's right. He became very ill. Yeah. That was because when he came to Bengal for his revolutionary activities, he had no time for pranayama. Otherwise, he was to do a lot of pranayama in Baroda. So psychophysical. Okay? So behind all these terms of ancient psychophysical science lies the one great fact and law of our being, that whatever be its temporary poise of form, consciousness, power in this material evolution, there must be behind it, and there is a greater, truer existence of which this is only the external result and physically sensible aspect. So, what is this temporary poise of form, consciousness and power? So, some human beings live purely in the body and meet their requirements. Some go even to the vital requirements. Some live in the form, in the mind. So that's what he's saying. Whatever be the temporary poise of form, consciousness and power. So it is catering to everybody's, but in the lower consciousness. This material universe, there must be behind it, and there is a greater, truer existence of which this is only the external result and physically sensible aspect. He is referring to this greater consciousness very clearly to the self. When you make your mind silent, your consciousness rises out of your body-mind life and experiences the static Brahman, if you want. The static Brahman is a consciousness which is featureless, immutable, infinite, eternal. It is static. Okay? You enter into a place where there is no time and no space. But you can't describe that because it has no features. So it's very difficult to describe it. That's why it is anirvachaniya. You can't speak about it. But you can experience it. It's the only thing that is real. In fact, that is so real that then at that time the physical body-mind life seems to be unreal. That's a Mayavada theory. But it need not be so. Sri Aurobindo says, when your consciousness rises to the self, three possibilities are there. One is you see the physical world as unreal, only images as on a screen, and you reject it. You say, this is not the reality at all. Or you may be in the cosmic consciousness and you will see that although they are forms, temporary forms, there is a reality behind them. Or you may see the physical world as unreal, but you don't jump to conclusions like the Buddhists and the Mayavadins. You wait. That's what Sri Aurobindo did. He said, I can't believe that this is the ultimate truth, so I'll wait. And then he had the experience of power, bliss and all that later on, which filled that emptiness. Okay? So that's what he means by this.
Question?
Yeah.
Is there a question?
No.
This greater consciousness, he's talking about the self. Yes.
One says, when you use greater this consciousness, it only means self-consciousness. But I feel that it even above the mind, whatever consciousness it may be, we can say the greater consciousness. Maybe spiritual consciousness also may be greater consciousness.
There are consciousnesses even greater than the self. But immediately after the body-mind life, it's the self. So that's why he's not talking of the supermind and things like that. He's saying behind, just above the mind, you have the self. Yeah.
Greater than the self is the Purushottama.
Oh, even between there are other planes, huh? The higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, and then supermind. So the Purushottama is at that highest level. So there is a greater and truer existence of which this is only the external resultant, physically sensible aspect. Because when you go to the other planes, higher planes, you don't need senses. You have sight which takes over, and you have also identification. Those are the instruments by which you experience those planes of consciousness. You don't need physical senses. You can use subtle senses if you want, but not physical senses.
Is the third eye there at that plane, the third eye?
Third eye is, yeah, subtle vision. The subtle vision comes in, certainly, yeah. In fact, he has, at a higher level, higher than the higher mind, you have revelation and inspiration. Revelation is truth sight, and inspiration is truth hearing. But without the ears and without the eyes. Okay? So, after all, when we are dreaming, we are hearing and we are seeing. But we are not using our eyes, so that's subtle sight. So, now, what he says now, next sentence, our substance does not end with the physical body. That is only the earthly pedestal, the terrestrial base, the material starting point. Note interestingly how he's saying our substance. Your body is a substance, your vital also is a substance which is subtler, because we very well know that all your emotions have form, color, and even a subtle density. Even that is there. They take forms. People who are clairvoyant can see whether you are angry or you are in love or you are having jealousy or in what condition you are, in a disturbed condition. They will be able to see the substance. So, that is what he means by our substance does not end with the physical body. That is only the earthly pedestal, the base, okay? The terrestrial base, the material starting point. As there are behind our waking mentality vaster ranges of consciousness, subconscious and superconscious to it, of which we become sometimes abnormally aware, so there are behind our gross physical being other and subtler grades of substance with a finer law and a greater power which support the denser body and which can, by our entering into the ranges of consciousness belonging to them, be made to impose that law and power on our dense matter and substitute their purer, higher, intenser conditions of being for the grossness and limitation of our present physical life and impulses and habits. So, what he's saying is that normally at our level, maximum we can control ourselves by the mind. The mind can impose certain discipline and certain strictness of the vital, not always successfully, mostly not successful. Temporarily it may succeed. But when you go into the higher levels of consciousness, you can use that power to control the body-mind life.
I'm interested in the term abnormally aware.
Yeah, abnormal, because it's not normally that you see that. For yogis it is normal, but not for a normal man. Certainly you may feel aware of certain things. Okay. It can happen. When you are ready from past lives, then you can have a certain opening. So that's why he's saying that. Okay. So, and if that be so, then he's saying what can happen? Then the evolution of a nobler physical existence, not limited by the ordinary conditions of animal birth and life and death, of difficult alimentation and facility of disorder and disease and subjection to poor and unsatisfied vital cravings, ceases to have the appearance of a dream and chimera and becomes a possibility founded upon a rational and philosophic truth which is in accordance with all the rest that we have hitherto known, experienced, or been able to think out about the overt and secret truth of our existence. Huge sentence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 lines, one sentence. So, so we have to go phrase by phrase and see what he's meaning. Okay, so he's saying if that be so, in other words, it is possible to rise to higher levels of consciousness and act from that level of consciousness, not the mental. So you can have power over your mind and your vital also. In India, we know this very well because yogis do have powers. We know that very well. Then, the evolution of a nobler physical existence, note that. While you are in the body also, still you will have a diviner consciousness than at present. Physical, okay? Nobler physical existence, not limited by our ordinary conditions of animal birth. Our animal birth, it could be birth of another type. That's a hint he's giving. Swayambhu, you can create yourself. He's talking of the supermental. And life and death. So, if it's an animal birth, then you are bound to have death. There is no escape from it. Even for avatars, there is bound to be death if you are born in the animal way. Okay, so of difficult alimentation. Difficult alimentation, food. Eating of food. In French you have the word aliment, so it's from there. And that means difficult alimentation means you have to keep feeding your body, and that's difficult. Suppose you come across a place where you don't have food. So it is difficult condition. Alimentation is difficult always. That's what it means. Then, and facility of disease. There was one person who got pretty confused with this facility of disease. What does that mean? Facility, normally when we speak of facility, when a guest comes in, he says, "May I use your facilities?" That means the bathroom and other things. So, what is your conveniences? But here it doesn't mean that. He is using it in the French sense of facile. Okay? That means it is easy to get disorder. Very easily we can get into disorder. That's what it means. Facility of disease. Okay? Yeah. So, the person was asking, how can disorder be easy? So, but if you substitute the word facility by the very easily it can become, then we can understand. Okay? So, and disease and subjection to poor and unsatisfied vital cravings ceases to have the appearance of a dream and chimera. Because when you go to that higher self, you see the physical world as a dream and a chimera. That means it's an illusion. You see it as an illusion. But you need not see it as an illusion, he's saying. You can see it as real. Okay? As we spoke about the three possibilities, when you go to the self, you can have the cosmic consciousness, then the world is not an illusion anymore. It is real. Because you are in the cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness means you feel the whole cosmos within you. How can it be false then? Or you are in every element in the cosmos. Cosmic consciousness has got two aspects. One is you find yourself in everything, or you find the whole universe within yourself. We come back to that famous example of the Sri Krishna. He is eating mud and his mother Yashoda says, "Open your mouth, what are you doing? Why are you eating mud?" She opens and she sees the whole universe in his mouth. So that's a symbol of the cosmic consciousness. Okay, so in fact, Sri Ramdas has many sonnets describing the cosmic consciousness. He says the largest stars, I'm not using the exact words, the largest stars in the universe are burning within me.
In me, Arcturus and Belphegor burn.
Yes, that's right. Because now Arcturus and Belphegor are spoken of very little. There are much bigger things. That's why I didn't mention it. Okay? And this is not an imagination. It's a real. You see yourself in everybody. In fact, in one sonnet he says, to whatever I see outside myself, to whichever person I see myself but in another face. It's a sonnet. So, ceases to have the appearance of a dream and chimera and becomes a possibility founded upon a rational and philosophic truth. It's not just a wild imagination, it is truth, which is in accordance with all the rest that we have hitherto known. Okay? What have you known hitherto? The physical world. So it's fully consistent with all the things that you are seen in the physical world. Experienced or been able to think out about the overt and the secret truth of our existence. So,
there was in England, I forget his name now. He says, there but for the grace of God.
Yeah. Sir Philip Sidney.
Huh?
Sir Philip Sidney.
Philip Sidney. And Sri Ranganath said he almost had it right. It's there by the grace of the God.
Not but.
Not but for, but by.
In other words, even when there are tragic events, you must consider them to be a grace of God. That's what he means. Because your soul progress can be much faster when you are given challenges. And challenges can be very difficult. You mustn't see challenges or difficulties in the world as obstacles to your normal progress. You must see it as an opportunity to cross that barrier and progress. So all untoward events, okay, are actually a grace. Okay, so after he says this, he says, so it should rationally be. For the uninterrupted series of the principles of our being and their close mutual connection is too evident for it to be possible that one of them should be condemned and cut off while the others are capable of a divine liberation. The ascent of man from the physical to the supermental must open out the possibility of a corresponding ascent in the grades of substance to that ideal or causal body which is proper to our supramental being. And the conquest of the lower principles by supermind and its liberation of them into a divine life and a divine mentality must also render possible a conquest of our physical limitations by the power and principle of supramental substance. And this means the evolution not only of an untrammeled consciousness, a mind and sense not shut up in the walls of the physical ego or limited to the poor basis of knowledge given by the physical organs of sense, but a life power liberated more and more from its mortal limitations, a physical life fit for a divine inhabitant, and in the sense not of attachment or of restriction to our present corporeal frame, but an exceeding of the law of the physical body, the conquest of death and earthly immortality. For from the divine bliss, the original delight of existence, the Lord of immortality, comes pouring the wine of that bliss, the mystic soma, into these jars of mentalized living matter. Eternal and beautiful, he enters into these sheaths of substance for the integral transformation of the being and nature. So, the last bit is almost poetry.
One of the most thrilling sentences in the life.
Beautiful. But it's very interesting. What the words he's using are very, very interesting and you look into it, then you understand what he's saying. So, that's the end of the chapter. So, we'll do that now. So he's saying, after he has told you in the previous para that your consciousness is not necessarily limited only to your body-mind life. It can rise out of body-mind life and go into higher planes of consciousness, and it can continue to live from there. It need not be only an experience, but you can get permanently stationed in those higher levels of consciousness and act from there. Just as we are acting now from our body-mind life, we can also act from there. Being stationed there, we can act. Okay, that's what he's saying. So it should rationally be. Why? He is explaining why. For the uninterrupted series of the principles of our being and their close mutual connection is too evident for it to be possible that one of them should be condemned and cut off while the others are capable of a divine liberation. The higher planes, subtler substance, so a divine liberation is possible there, and the physical is not possible. That is doubtful. There is a sense of continuity. He says in other place also, the law of continuity demands that even matter should be possible to be transformed.
And he uses the word mutual.
Yes.
So the others are also dependent on the physical.
Yes.
It's not that the physical is inferior.
Yes. Because this is gross substance and that also is substance. In other words, it is matter, but subtle matter. Even the divine is matter, but it is subtle matter. There is a very interesting phrase there, which we'll see. That phrase is mentalized living matter. We'll discuss that. That's very interesting. Okay, so we read that sentence, divine liberation. So, the ascent of man from the physical to the supramental must open out the possibility of a corresponding ascent in the grades of substance to that ideal or causal body. Now, here we are. So, to that ideal, second level, spiritual planes of consciousness, or causal body, third level of consciousness. Very clearly, ideal now, this is one of the places where you can get what he means by ideal. When he talks of the ideal planes of consciousness, he is referring to the Higher mind, element mind, intuitive mind, overmind. Not the supermind, not the body-mind life, but the intermediate planes of consciousness.
Can it not be that ideal is a synonym for causal here?
For?
Can it not be that ideal and causal are used as synonyms here?
Causal? No. No.
But the Karana Sharira, the causal body,
is not the subtle one.
has two components, the Vijnana and the Ananda.
Okay, that's the highest, yeah. So, but when you divide into three, Anmol, gross world, subtle world, causal world.
Ranganath, I have seen Sri Aurobindo using the word ideal for the supramental itself at multiple places.
You have to see the context.
Now, he calls the supermental at one place real idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Real idea as well as ideal. It's there in the record of yoga, even on the page number 1323. There he has used the word ideal for supramental, very clearly.
So, in fact, his use of words is very flexible, but you have to see the context. Okay? Real idea, in the supermind, real idea. That is the blueprint of everything that is there in the physical world, is a real idea. That we'll discuss when we come to that. But this is what is meaning. So, very clearly, the ascent of man from the physical to the supramental must open out the possibility of a corresponding ascent in the grades of substance to that ideal or causal body which is proper to our supramental being. Causal body which is proper to the supramental being. Okay? So, your body is a substance, your vital also is a substance, subtler substance, your mind also is substance. It has got forms and even color, thoughts have color also. You can actually see the thoughts. Jugalda, this came to light when Jugalda was acting 1952. Jugal Kishore Mukherjee was playing Perseus the Deliverer on the stage. And his mind is very, very clear. He used to be. He is not there anymore. So, mother said his thinking is so clear that the thoughts come out absolutely well formed. She says that. So, in other words, she's seeing. And the more formed they are, the more clear your thought is. They are not fuzzy and hazy. Okay? In fact, in our Indian philosophy also we say, when I am thinking of a mountain, the substance, the mental substance in me takes the form of a mountain. That's what they say. So, the mental substance itself takes these forms. That is why abstract thinking is not so easy. Okay, so, and whenever we understand something, we are trying to arrange this mental substance into forms which you can grasp easily. That's what is meant by trying to understand things. Okay.
When he talks about this ascending into these finer grades, you've just read that.
Yeah. The ascent of man. You went from there? The ascent of man from the physical to the supramental must open out the possibility of a corresponding ascent in the grades of substance.
The ascent in the grades of substance.
Yes. It becomes subtler and subtler and subtler and subtler. But they are grades of substance. In fact, many children ask when they are, what is this? What is it that is becoming subtler? They ask. So the answer to that is, it can be substance, it can be consciousness, it can be power, it can also be ananda. It is Satchidananda which is taking all this. But Satchidananda basically, it is substance. Yeah. In fact, he says that consciousness can be physical, it can be vital, it can be mental, it can be spiritual, it can be supramental. Consciousness itself also has different grades. Consciousness is a fundamental thing. It is not like science. Science does not think so anymore. Now they have realized that consciousness is something fundamental.
They have accepted it?
Yes, many. Not maybe the hardcore scientists, but the others, they are very commonly now, they have accepted that consciousness is the basic substance. That whole movement changed after the quantum theory. Because they saw that your consciousness, the observer, when he is observing the experiment, it is changing the experiment. So that was, consciousness is very important. So they have understood.
That's why the double blind failed.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
What is that?
the double blind in the tests. You see, the person who was in the double blind was also experiencing and changing the test, changing the result.
Okay, so grades of substance to that ideal or causal body which is proper to the supramental being. So the causal body is at the supramental being. I said that Anmol because gross world, subtle world, causal world. So gross world, sthula, subtle world, sukshma, and karana.
Yeah, but the higher mind, human mind, over mind up till, it is included by Sri Aurobindo in mind itself.
Okay, if you say that, then we have to remind ourselves that there is a interpolation of all these planes. So, although you can speak of them as continuous, you can also speak that there is a certain differentiation also. And a sort of, you can call it geographical location. But there is an interpolation and a intermixing. That also is there.
Yeah.
So this vital mind is coming and the higher mind is coming in the subtle world, or that is coming in the casual world?
Subtle.
Subtle.
I'm a little hard of hearing, sir.
No, he's saying that the higher mind, illumined mind, etc., would they be called part of the subtle?
Yes. There's an intermingling. There's an intermingling. But
And the thing to understand is always that there is no clear-cut gaps in the existence.
Exactly.
It's always a gradation.
note the word uninterrupted series. So it's not like a staircase. It's more like a ramp.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then we go to the next sentence.
And this means?
Yeah. And the conquest of the lower principles by supermind and its liberation of them into a divine life and a divine mentality must also render possible a conquest of our physical limitations by the power and principle of supramental substance. Now, what is these physical limitations? Necessity of eating, necessity of sleeping, necessity of birth and death. Inevitable. No one can live without food, no one can live without sleep, no one can live conquering death. So, these limitations can be conquered when the supramental substance is reached and stabilized. Now that has been achieved, but that has to become, your consciousness has to act from that level. In other words, your consciousness must become fully supramental. And what he means by that, we will see. Okay, he's saying something interesting. And this means the evolution not only of an untrammeled consciousness, untrammeled, unobstructed. Trammel is a fishing net. So, untrammeled means you are not netted, you are not caught, you are free. Okay, that's what it means. So, untrammeled consciousness, a mind and sense not shut up in the walls of the physical ego or limited to the poor basis of knowledge given by the physical organs of sense. All science is usually based on physical senses. Of course, they use the mind also, but the base is always the physical senses. They always refer back to. That's why it is experimental, empiricism. They always experiment and find out. Without experimenting, they will not accept anything. That is the nature of science. But note interestingly that you can experiment also in the subtle fields. You can also experiment, and that's what Sri Aurobindo was doing. He was testing his own power, he was testing his own consciousness, he was testing. His power he was testing first over animals, okay? Then over events in the world.
But science is unable to understand anything subjective.
That is getting changed quite a lot.
Is it?
Yeah. Because consciousness is subjective, na? So,
Yes.
there is an objective consciousness. That is true. But they are beginning to understand.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
When this quantum has come, then a lot of things are changing.
Yes, that's right.
Which books, Ranganath, can be read for understanding this better?
2 books. The Tao of Physics, that is the Fridge of Capra, and the other one is The Dancing Woolly Masters. That the Dancing Movie Masters is written by a journalist. He's a journalist. But he has put it very well, and you can read that also. How science has become philosophy. Has stumbled onto philosophy. So the divine mentality must also render a conquest of our physical limitations by the power and principle of supremacism. And this means the evolution not only of an untrammeled consciousness, a mind and sense not shut up in the walls of the physical ego or limited to the poor basis of knowledge given by the physical organs of sense, but a life power liberated more and more from its mortal limitations, a physical life fit for the divine inhabitant. So, when the supramental transformation takes place, your body will become fit for a divine consciousness, the divine inhabitant. Now, if the divine tries to come into you, either you will feel frightened, or you will feel, if you are impure, then or you will not want it, or you will break. But it has to become fit. I know of all the three cases. There was somebody who told me, okay, that when there was a descent into him, he felt frightened. Because you start feeling, expanding yourself, so you feel frightened. You are not used to that. So there is fright, if you are impure. Or, that happened even with Gopi Krishna. Gopi Krishna, the famous person, Kashmiri yogi, he was very well known. He has written a lot of books on Tantra. So he also, when that first he experienced the higher consciousness coming down into him, he felt frightened. And he fell sick for nearly 2-3 years. Then he slowly recovered. He wrote to Sri Aurobindo also about it. Now, and I know of one person who had an experience of golden light coming into you. I am talking of all this because he is saying, fit for a divine inhabitant. Right now we are not fit for a divine inhabitant. Most of us. So, this person, a golden light was coming in. But she didn't want it. It's disturbing my present condition. She told me herself very clearly. She said, it is golden light coming in, but I didn't want, part of me didn't want it. Part of it is enjoying, but part of it doesn't want. In Savitri, you have those lines, na? Man is in love with his own ignorance. I'm not exact line, but that he loves his own limitations and his own ignorance. We are all very comfortable with our comfort zone.
There is a darkness in terrestrial things which will not suffer long, too glad a note.
Yes, that's right.
What was the third one? You said there were 3.
Okay. Or your jar breaks. You lose your mind and psychologically you get disturbed. That can happen. We have had several cases in the ashram.
So fear.
Yeah. A refusal. And breaking, yes. So, but you have to, if you don't want these 3 things, you have to prepare yourself, purify yourself. Then you will be fit for a divine inhabitant. Your soul can become divine.
Regarding the fear one, so there is an aphorism of Sri Aurobindo where he says that as I was climbing higher and higher crests of his joys of the divine, I almost got afraid of God's embraces. He uses the word afraid. Of course, it is a way of writing, but...
Yeah. That's right. So we go to the... then he has put a comma dash. This is typically Sri Aurobindo's way of talking, because whenever he puts a comma dash, we would normally put a parenthesis. Parenthetical phrase, Sri Aurobindo never uses parenthesis. He always uses a comma dash. That's a typical his style. Yeah, comma dash. Yeah, you see that? There is a comma dash there and the comma dash here. So when you are reading Sri Aurobindo, you have to read it in 2 ways. You read it normally, then you read only the parenthetical phrase, then you read the sentence without the parenthetical phrase, and then you add that again. Then you will understand what he's saying. So, here he is using, we'll read only the parenthetical phrase. in the sense not of attachment or of restriction to our present corporeal frame, but an exceeding of the law of the physical body. Okay? So, he's saying physical life fit for the divine inhabitant, not in the sense of a attachment or of restriction to our present corporeal frame, but an exceeding of the law of the physical body. So, okay? And this is what can happen. The supramental substance will impose itself on the physical substance. The word again, impose, comes up again. Yeah. Okay? But an exceeding of the law of the physical body, the conquest of death, an early immortality. Earthly. It's early also. An earthly immortality. So, in other words, a supramental being can create himself, not biologically, he can create himself swayambhu, or he can dissolve himself also after he feels that his work is over. But that's not death as we understand it. It's a purposeful self-dissolution of that particular form. That's possible.
And the souls which consciously come and consciously leave, without the supramental thing, what is happening is that when they come down, they lose their consciousness of who they are. That won't happen to the supramental being.
Yes.
Otherwise, the argument can be made that Ichha Mrityu to Bhishma Pitama ke zamane se hai.
That's right.
So it's not the same thing.
Yeah. No, but there's another thing. Ichha Mrityu is certain. Only you choose the time you want to go. But you can't avoid Mrityu. Whereas the supramental being is not subject to Mrityu.
We even see it in Savitri. In the beginning, she doesn't know that she's an incarnation of the divine.
Yeah, that's right.
She's a young girl. She's having experiences. She's gone through different stages of life.
Yeah.
It's only this crisis that brings it. And even then, she wants to leave with him.
Yes.
Or she wants to forget God even. She says that, forgetting God.
In fact, that happened also with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because for a long time, sometimes he used to identify himself fully with the divine. And he used to, when people used to come to him, he would bless them and he would grant their wishes and all that. And at other times, he was the aspirant. He was a human being asking for God's grace. So Sri Aurobindo says he was a partial avatar. So that can also happen. In fact, this is a very interesting combination because Nara Narayana, you are a human being, but you can become divine. And there is a whole an allegory in the Veda. This Kutsa and Indra. Kutsa is a human being and Indra is a divine consciousness. Traveling in the same carriage, okay, in the same chariot. And by the time they come to the end of their journey, Kutsa has become almost divine. He has been transformed. So transformed that even Indra's wife has difficulty in recognizing between the two who is who. But because of her purity, she could recognize, but others could not recognize the difference between the two. A human being can become divine.
And that is why she is called Sachi. Sach being the Hindi word for truth.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so for from the divine bliss, the original delight of existence, the Lord of immortality comes pouring the wine of that bliss, the mystic soma, into these jars of mentalized living matter. Eternal and beautiful, he enters into these sheaths of substance for the integral transformation of the being and nature. So, being is a substance, it changes, and nature also, psychologically also will be changed. But what is interesting here is that mentalized living matter. Man is a mentalized living matter. It is, first of all, he is matter. A stone is a matter. An insect or an animal is living matter into which life has been put in. I like to put it that way. And mentalized living matter itself is becoming more and more capable of housing the divine consciousness. Okay? Your brain is capable of thought. Your muscle is not. Your muscle can't think. It is living matter. But brain is mentalized matter. It is matter, but mentalized. So it can also become super mentalized.
So when Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was 90 pounds, began to transform every aspect of his body, it was through the mind on the muscle.
I don't know about he did that? He could do that? Or was it in a movie?
No, he didn't.
And he became Mr. Universe.
He was 7 years Mr. Universe.
Yes.
7 years. And he transformed every aspect. He was a little guy, he was nothing. And he became the greatest.
Okay, so this chapter is the ascending series of substance. Now in the next chapter, he says, I will divide this ascending series into 7 planes of consciousness. He follows the Vedic pattern. So we'll take that up next time. The 7-fold chord of being.